Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and
muito
gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you here on in this online format. I hope everyone can hear me well. If you have any trouble listening, you can make sure you put that in the chat. We have simultaneous translation. You can choose the channel on the main page to listen to this in English or Portuguese. This forum is organized by the International um, uh, Embrapa, as well as the University of Caxias do Sul. The agenda of this third forum started yesterday. It was called with a seminar yesterday with transmission on the YouTube channel. Today, we are going to continue with the plenary session, business spaces, networking, technical visits, among others. To check out all these opportunities, you should go on the homepage of the platform and organize your agenda and make the most of our event. Before we start the plenary sessions, we would like to thank all the authorities that are here. Our special thanks to our sponsors that made it possible for the webinars to happen in 2020 as well as in February this year. And this third edition of the Forum of Biogas and Biomethane have the following um, sponsors. Golar Power, Itaipu Binational, BEP, the Energy Program for Brazil, the Prosperity Fund of the United Kingdom, implemented by a consortium established by Adam Smith International Institute 17, Hubs FGV, Carbon Limiting Technologies. Great for partnership. We also like to thank our silver sponsors, BRDE, Leon Energy, SC Gas, Soul Gas. The bronze sponsors, AEB Energy, A White, CHP Brazil, Intermark, ERBR, GNPW, Janus and Perger, Lumming, Prex Diesel, UVE. And our supporters, Biogas, IBRLP, AH, KRS, APL, MMEA, CIC of Caxias do Sul, Convention Caxias Bureau, EMATER of the state of Rio Grande do Sul, Agri from Santa Catarina, FIERC, Senai, GEF Biogas Brazil, IDR, State of Paraná, the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. Thank you, Red Biolac, SIBRI, SEGH, CIMEX, Simplas, Unido, Univates, ACE-TAP, Swines, and Trevisan Farming. Thank you so much for participating in this third Biogas and Biomethane Forum that aims at developing this chain in the states of Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, and Paraná, as well as the rest of Brazil. This forum is a space that makes it possible for people in the production chain of biogas connect with each other and with this industry trends generating business development and sustainability with the support of a number of public and private institutions aligned with the objectives of the event. The forum has the participation of farmers, research specialists, innovation, technology specialists, students, professors, schools, universities, cooperatives in a number of areas, and also joins ministries, departments of the government, regulatory agencies, as well as the Prosperity Fund of the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for being here. We would like to invite you during the breaks to visit the companies that have their stands in the business space. It's very easy to access. It is at the menu on the left hand side of the main page. So, on behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank all the speakers, moderators. Thank you so much for being here. We would also like to leave a message, our thoughts going to the families that have lost their loved ones to the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that better days will come soon. At the end of every panel, we're going to hold debates with the speakers and moderators. You can vote directly in the chat and also placing your questions. The discussion rooms happen every at the end of every panel. You can check the topics on the home page. Remember, each discussion room can only have up to 50 participants, so join as soon as possible. Also, share your participation and social media by using hashtag biogas biomethane on your posts on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And if you're participating in this event, the access code is going to be delivered to you. With the code, you can access the challenge. So then you can fill out the field and gain points, and the winners will be at the end of the event awarded with prizes. You can get points by visiting company stands and by participating in the various challenging activities. You should also check out those that have exhibits. You can also make appointments of representatives of companies during the coffee break and lunch break. The certificate of participation will be sent out to you by email next week. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. So, with this, we start. It's with great honor that we invite Suelen Paesi for her introductory words. Hello, Professor. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Flavia. It is
Biogás e
a
biometano.
great joy to start this third forum of biogas and biomethane. It started informally during a conversation and during a trip. And yesterday, we had great participation on our first day. The objective of the forum, as mentioned before, has always been to contribute to development of the biogas and biomethane chain, especially the states of Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, and Paraná. Our mission is to create a discussion space so that the biogas production chain stakeholders can be in touch
Resíduos em energias renováveis.
and evaluating opportunities. It's also a space for disseminating opportunities, business opportunities, as well as investment opportunities. At the same time, an opportunity to debate and minimize the impacts of the economic activities have on the environment. All this supported by technological innovation, research, and a number of cases, so that we are fully connected with the production industry. And then changing Brazil's profile internationally as a country that can generate an environmentally friendly economy. This event also intends to stimulate private and government action with a holistic view can implement biogas plants in the southern region of Brazil. Even though the moment we're living in as a result of the pandemic, we have had to hold this online. But this has meant we are keeping social distancing, but at the same time, we are placing value on this important topic of biogas and biomethane. I'd like to thank the University of Caxias do Sul, Embrapa, Swines, and Poultry, among others, for organizing this event. I would also like to thank the sponsor, especially Brazil Energy Program, for making it possible to have the first meeting between Brazil and the UK about biogas. I'd like to thank the organizers as well as media vehicles that have led to a very high number of participants in this forum. I'd like to also thank the speakers and moderators for sharing their experiences and their expectations on this process. And finally, to greet over 1,000 participants that have registered, even though we are separated physically because of the circumstances, we can together improve the biogas scenario. I'm going to use a sentence from a rock and roll reggae Brazilian song saying, "Today I challenge the world without leaving home." From the Rapper group, I would like to wish everyone a great event. Well, thank you so much, Professor Suellen, the coordinator of the event, for her introductory words. And now I invite you to watch the video from Itaipu Binational.
Todos os anos, Itaipu entrega milhões de megawatts-hora e transforma a vida das pessoas. É a energia que está no sorriso da Aninha, na brincadeira do Caio, no trabalho do Paulo, na vida da Maria. E com toda essa energia, Itaipu entrega obras que beneficiam a nossa gente. Porque mais do que gerar energia, somos uma usina de entregas. Itaipu, o amanhã já começou.
Muito bem, pessoal. Vamos dar início então ao primeiro painel do Fórum Sul-Brasileiro.
Actually, we are going to start the first panel of this forum with the biogas outlook in Brazil. To conduct this panel, Rafael Gonzalez.
Rafael,
he is already here connected with us. We are going to get to know his CV. He is an environmental engineer and is taking a master's degree in environmental engineering at the University of Paraná. He has over 10 years of experience in renewables. He has participated in the business and structuring plan for the International Center for Renewables, the CI Biogas, in 2012 and 2016. He took over the directorship of technology development. In 2020, he has become the CEO of CI Biogas, conducting strategic projects. Today, he is a board member of the Biogas and the member of the board of GEF Brazil applications of biogas in the Brazilian agricultural industries. We would also to invite Renato Cabral Dias Duas, Bruno Casagrande Neves, Clarissa Vargas, and Alessandro Gardeman. Welcome to the speakers. We would like to thank you for having accepted our invitation. So now Rafael Gonzalez has the floor to conduct the panel. Welcome. Good morning, Flavia, and to all participants. I would like to especially greet and say that it is a great honor to be conducting this first panel of the forum. It's highly relevant because it's going to bring the outlook for biogas and biomethane in Brazil with very relevant people in the industry. They know what they're talking about. We have Renato from the Ministry of Mines and Energy with the first speech of the panel talking about energy planning with impacts on biogas, and this is highly relevant to our discussions. We have Bruno, who is going to talk about the GEF Biogas Brazil project, especially at this point in time. We have two calls for tender, one for tropicalization and technology and consolidation of biogas and biomethane technologies. Clarissa Vargas, who is going to be, she is from the UK Prosperity Fund in Brazil. She is also working to develop biogas and is going to introduce the concept under the fund. And Alessandro Gardeman, CEO of AB Biogas, and who has made a great contribution in this industry, not only for being the founder of Biogas, but also Geoenergetic, which is the company he's running. So this is going to be a great panel ahead of us. I had some brief comments in terms of concepts for the outlook and a number of words of thanks, but I am going to skip that and move on to the speeches for the sake of time. The only comment I'd like to make is to thank our sponsors, especially, and also the participants, those who are watching. We see that it varies from universities, investors. So it is a very diverse group of participants, but it is exactly the target group we intended. So without further ado, I would like to invite Renato Cabral Dutra, General Coordinator of Biodiesel and other biofuels under the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Renato, good morning. I'm going to read your CV very briefly, and then you have the floor. Renato today holds the position of General Coordinator of Biodiesel and other biofuels under the Ministry of Mines and Energy. He has 14 years of experience, both in the public sector and the private sector, and since 2013, he is a member of the National Agency of Oil, Natural Gas, and Biofuels. He was ranked number one in a public competition to hold that position. He has a master's from INSPER, and he is now undergoing a PhD degree in economics at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. He has had a number of leading positions, and he has had a number of activities in biodiesel, ethanol, economic regulation, logistics of fuels, and strategic planning. You will have the floor now, and we move on. You have 15 minutes.
Já estamos vendo sua apresentação, Renato.
We can already see your presentation, Renato. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to greet all participants here today, our audience, Rafael, our moderator, debaters, Bruno and Clarissa. I would like to know if you can see my screen now.
Dá para enxergar bem
It is
na
perfect. We
primeira
can
página.
see it really well. It looks great. It is an honor to open this panel representing the Ministry of Mines and Energy to deal about the energy planning and biogas. Before I start my presentation, it is worthwhile mentioning that we used four pillars to elaborate this. The first one, it is to base the work we do over time, bringing in the timeline in the short, mid, and long term. The second pillar is for us to work at a national level, where even though the forum is on the Brazilian South, the third one is that we will not get into the topics of other debaters because we will have different speakers here today. The fourth one, it is to analyze biomethane and other biofuels, comparing it to other sectors in the economy. I have divided my agenda into three blocks. The first one includes biogas in the long term within the context of the national energy planning. And then in the second block, we're going to talk about the midterm. And then in the third block, we will talk about the short term policies for biogas. Starting with the first one, talking about biogas in the long run, we bring in energy planning. Perhaps some of you are not aware, but the National Energy Plan is based on three phases. The energy sector has two important characteristics. The first one is that it involves long term investments that take a long time to mature. Also, we need strategic planning. With that, the mid and long term planning are very important so that we can align the sector with national priorities that are defined within this plan. So, how do we structure the national energy planning in the scope of the government? First of all, we have documents that are produced aiming at the long term. It is a document called the Long Term Energy Plan. We have prepared the PNE for 2050 with a vision for 30 years. This document is aligned with international aspects. Brazil has ratified these, such as the Paris Agreement and the scope of the UN. It highlights two things. First of all, the strategic guidelines where we're moving to, and also to be able to transform these guidelines into actual facts, we have recommendations for the respective government agencies. This long term vision is the basis for us to divide it into a shorter 10-year vision. It is usually published by the 10-year energy plan, the so-called PDE. It was published as the PDE for 2030. This document transformed these guidelines into opportunities and action programs so that this vision becomes a reality. This midterm vision over time, within this 10-year frame, it is transformed into public policies aiming at the implementation of this action plan. It is important to highlight that biogas and biomethane is part of the short, mid, and long-term planning of the Brazilian energy sector. Even though it is part of this plan, I'd like to share something interesting with you. It is part of the recent history only. This is a recent history. I am showing you a report published by Biogas in 2017, where the 10-year energy plan for 2026, it was published in 2016. It was the first time ever that biogas was mentioned in this plan. Now going back to the long term, what do we have in the National Energy Plan in terms of strategic guidelines that work as a basis to guide biogas expansion? There's a series of guidelines. I brought in 5, which I believe to be the most important ones for advancement of biogas in the long run. The first guideline is to provide clear instructions so that over these 30 years, we have a gradual replacement of oil byproducts in the energy sector. The second guideline has to do with the strengthening of bioenergy and Brazil's relevance in the development of biotechnology. The third guideline is very clear and it's aimed at biogas and biomethane, focusing on competitive energy of agribusiness waste. We'll talk about this later, with a decentralized production of biogas, biomethane, and bioelectricity. Also, we have the promotion of conditions for the replacement of diesel generation in isolated systems. Also, we want to promote efficient development of the market and infrastructure of natural gas. So, how do these guidelines play their role in the energy planning in the midterm? These are things informed by the document. The document informs the government that based on these guidelines, we have a few recommendations that we should work with. I have 18 recommendations that apply to biogas and biomethane, and I have divided them into 3 blocks. In the first block, when we talk about institutional conditions, because we know this is a new market, developing favorable environment makes a lot of difference so that this is all implemented. So the first one, it is the adjustment of these institutional arrangements, regulatory arrangements, and the market design so that we can really have this expansion in the market of biogas and biomethane. Also, in terms of institutional challenges, I have a second recommendation. It is for the government to articulate energy policies in the sector with science and technology policies. This has to do with research projects for technological development in the sector. And then in a second block, with challenges in energy, we have the so-called decarbonization. There are 2 recommendations. The first has to do with fomenting actions towards energy efficiency and innovation. Also, creating conditions for the decisions to be made to increase the consistency of policies and decarbonization measures. This has a lot to do with the Brazilian program and the national policy of biofuels. We will talk about this later as well. And then finally, the 4 next recommendations for us to wrap up are related to the fuel sector. They are also related to the challenge of decarbonization, but we separated it because they have a direct impact. The government needs to develop a roadmap, a guide for the use of biomethane in the long run. The second recommendation is that because this expansion of biomethane has a perspective that is considered a priority by ANP in terms of specifying fuels according to biomethane quality monitoring. We also have guidelines to develop small projects for the production and use of the 2 biofuels, and also to increase attraction of biomethane in the market. And so in the second block of my presentation, it is important to discuss how this will take place in the midterm. I have 3 slides with 3 opportunities to illustrate this challenge in the midterm. The first opportunity has to do with energy consumption. When we get energy consumption in all of the sectors from 2019 to 2030, we can see an increase of 27%, and it is anticipated in this plan. But according to this growth, we have internal specifications of some of these sectors. in the transportation sector, and this is one of the main ones in the energy sector. We also have a large expansion of the distribution network. In the business sector, they are going to be the main responsible ones because they have the largest growth rate throughout this period. And then, of course, that the changes we can see in energy consumption and the pursuit for energy efficiency justify the need of these fields where biomethane can play an important role. Now, the next one is energy consumption in transportation. Diesel will continue representing an essential role. First of all, we have cargo transportation with increasing agribusiness productions, increasing in civil constructions, which will increase the number of trucks, but also road transportation remains as the most relevant form and represent opportunities for biomethane expansion in the midterm. Also talking about opportunities in green grass effects, we have about 52% with an opportunity for the inclusion of biomethane in biogas, and this has to do with the mitigation measures planned by the federal government. Also, based on all of these midterm perspectives, we have four opportunities and initiatives that we can see right now, and they can be used by the sector. The first one is the new gas law. We know that this new market that was created has different opportunities. The production and use of biogas and biomethane will help us increase the offer of natural gas, but also decrease the carbon intensity. There is positive synergism between renewable source of energy, and the gas law has a third clause for the use of biomethane and natural gas. This is a unique opportunity. There are four opportunities. The first one, the law reduces the risk of the integration of renewables in the gas market. It also has a synergism with emerging solutions. It will also bring about significant investments in infrastructure, which will expand distribution capillarity. It also enables us to include the REIDI, which has to do with infrastructure. And then the second opportunity has to do with RenovaBio. So if in terms of efficiency, we have that biomethane has the best energy efficiency and the best values seen in terms of energy and fuel. On the other hand, we have a very short certification process, and there are a few authorized companies for biomethane production. So this is an important opportunity that we see. The third opportunity that we see is that we will have increased intermittent sources for the generation of energy. Wind and solar energy will increase. Also, self-production will increase 11%. Biogas can supply by means of stable supply the intermittence of the new sources. And then finally, we have another opportunity that has to do with the creation of green corridors. This is a new concept, and it has to do with processes in the energy transformation. So in addition to the creation of these green areas, we will be able to combine logistics to this innovation process in the transportation sector. Biomethane is undoubtedly a good opportunity. And then to wrap up with an exercise, we have agribusiness, which is a wonderful opportunity. And then if we calculate all of the energy conversions, we have that the agribusiness sector today consumes 6.9 billions of diesel, and there is an opportunity to replace 53% of this consumption by using these green corridors. And then to wrap up my presentation, I'd like to say that even though biogas is recent in our planning, there are opportunities to expand participation, and I have already commented it in my presentation. So the main message here is the role of the government along with the private sector to design public policies so that this mid and long-term plan actually takes place here in Brazil. I thank you all for the opportunity and for your attention.
Por gentileza, só me voltem na tela em vídeo.
Can you please put me back on the screen?
Não, acho que é para o pessoal da organização. Eu não consigo fazer o retorno do vídeo na tela para continuar a moderação. Agora sim. Perfeito. Muito obrigado, Renato. Que
Thank
fantástica.
you very much, Renato. What a fantastic presentation. Really, I don't recall having seen such a comprehensive understanding of these documents. There are different guidelines, and the way you shared with us the short, mid, and long-term vision helps us understand that we have an opportunity to develop a more consolidated market. Curiously enough, some of the questions I'd asked internally among the different speakers have already been explained in your presentation, and therefore I congratulate you for such a clear presentation. I understand that it shows a capacity that the National Energy Plan aiming at 2050, but also in the short term, can meet the national energy demand. I would also like to mention biomethane. Among the different characteristics that you mentioned, biomethane is highlighted as a trend for the upcoming years. It's an important perception of the Ministry of Mines and Energy and the federal government as a whole so that this market can advance. I would also like to express my opinion and perhaps a suggestion that the government and private sector have to work closer together so that this market can advance in a competitive manner from an economic perspective as well, since from an environmental perspective, it goes without saying that it's very competitive. I thank you, Renata. We're going to wait for the next speaker and being here for the next lecture. So I would like to invite Bruno Casagrande. Bruno, can you turn your camera on? I'm going to read your CV. Bruno is going to talk about the GEF Biogas Brazil project and its development. Bruno is a consultant for the United Nations on industrial development. He coordinates the implementation of the GEF Biogas Brazil project, which is led by the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovations. Bruno is a specialist in project management, has a broad experience in agro-energy development. He also has a degree on forest engineering by the University of São Paulo with MBA in project management by the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. Bruno, you're welcome once again, and feel free to make your presentation now.
Thank you, Rafael, and all those who participate, colleagues. I am now going to start sharing my screen, if you bear with me. I hope you can see my screen. Yes, we can see your screen. Go ahead, Bruno. So I am actually going to continue on what Renato has brought and reacting to his, let's say, sort of teaser and how this joint integration, the project is a good example of integration, and the opportunities that we hope to explore in the next months, in the next years. The GF Biogas Brazil is an initiative that was led for the Ministry of Science and Technology in Brazil, implemented by UNIDO, and financed by the Global Fund for the Environment. And it should look at the challenges of application of biogas within the various production chains. We have CI Biogas and Itaipu Binational, among other key institutions as participants, institutions that have been participants in this industry from the onset of this industry. So, and it works with the development of value chains. I think this perspective has really helped in implementing the program. The idea is that the applications of biogas are numerous, and you know that there is a huge potential for exploring. We have been publishing data on this for quite a long time. The challenge is to develop business models where applications will be competitive, as well as all the environmental impacts, so that this can grow organically and bring direct benefits in making these applications as competitive as possible, in addition to strategic resolves in terms of planning the use of the territory, the agricultural, livestock industries roles, and this, as well as the full value chain of the technology itself, with suppliers, equipment, and so on. How do we actually go about this project? We understand that there are three main fields or challenges. We have been working simultaneously to develop solutions to answer to these challenges. So we have the regulatory framework for applications of biogas, and also the decision-making process in terms of research and technology activities, the development itself of the actual value chain that demands a number of specialized services, parameters, integration among a number of industries, financial mechanisms for implementing technologies, among others. And above all, when we have such a diverse, comprehensive value chain with so many applications, and still at a very initial stage of disseminating it around the country, which is huge, you need to have references, you need to have models, you need to have a plan. So the project works on developing solutions based on these three pillars. So some of the results that we have already developed was the creation of a partnership with institutions such as Biogas, among others. So there is a network of institutions that specialize in biogas and business and development of opportunities that actually will share reliable data for this industry. So this is a digital platform that's under construction. Some features are already available at CI Biogas. In the site on the internet, there are a number of very relevant data. You have the SEBRAE homepage where you have something called data biogas, bringing a number of informations on market outlook. So you have also a lot of effort on business models. Today, we work directly with the government sector as well as the private sector in the states of Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul to validate, develop, and implement proven business as well as sharing these initiatives. So we're working with manioc production cooperative, Sanipar, a number of institutions to develop and implement these models in order to be able to share the experience with the whole value chain, including subsidies to help developing government policies. We're also working on technical training. We have done this already in the past. It's been a great success. I'm not going to go give you spoilers here, but this year we're going to be launching, as far as I know, the largest technical training initiative in renewables as a whole and specific on biogas for free on the internet. And a number of initiatives to make sure that investing in biogas is going to be easy and accessible. We're working with financial institutions, with the private sector to help conceive financial mechanisms and products that's going to integrate the technology, production technology, as well as biogas and all byproducts and other elements of guarantees so that this sector can develop. Also, we have focused on making sure there's competitiveness as well as adhering to the commitments that this production sector has with the world, reducing emissions, making sure that there's going to be sustainability as a whole. In order to make sure action like this is going to develop, we need to have a regional focus. And for this, we work as a catalyzer of partnerships and actions of those who already work with this and need a technology. I'm not going to mention all of them. There are many. This list grows every day. And it is through these partnerships that these actions actually materialize. So I'm going to take the opportunity of speaking to so many important stakeholders in this industry to disseminate two major actions we have developed recently and that are geared towards the market. So it's very important that people have access to information and participate. The first one is the tropicalization program. It is an initiative guaranteeing making sure that Brazilian companies have access and offering in the internal market the best, most competitive technologies, models, systems for using biogas. How do you implement this program? We are working with a number of challenges here that the Brazilian market has identified, a huge dialogue with research institutions, private, public sectors, agribusiness, to actually find out what the challenges are. And based on the challenges selected, identify partnerships, both internationally as well as domestically, to create the relationship, integrating them through technical services. What do I mean by that? Placing the most experienced minds in the biogas gas energy market available in Brazil, available to these companies in order to consolidate the business models, the technology offers, the projects already adapted to the specific needs of the Brazilian market. And I would like to invite you all to go into our homepage and to get to know the tropicalization program. It is an incredible amount of important data available and for free. The second one is selecting biogas plants that they're going to turn into showcase examples and to share in the market. The idea is to offer resources to cover added investments so that these plants are going to be benchmark showcases in order to bring more efficient models of application, better monitoring models for the process. Initially, we are going to focus on plants using agricultural waste, livestock waste placed in the southern region of Brazil. So how does it work? There is resources, a package of technologies to offer, and whoever's interested in participating is going to write a proposal, and the project can go up to 800,000 reais per proposal in added investment, anything that you want to improve in terms of your plant processes. And then from then on, we create a dissemination and monitoring program. Please do get in touch. The application process is open until the end of April, and it's open to all applicants, especially in the southern region, but those who are interested can get in touch with us to try and create this integration and identify a plant that can serve as a showcase for our project. The idea is to really stimulate the industry to get in touch with us. There are so many other initiatives. We have a great network of partnerships, and the idea is to develop applications and solutions so that this industry develops. Thank you so much. Thank you to our partners. Thank you so much, Bruno. Thank you so much for yet another excellent presentation. Can you please just unshare your screen so we can actually move on to the next presentation? I think it's very important to make a couple of comments on your presentation. There are two very important opportunities, resources available both for tropicalization of technology as well as for integrating companies offering technologies that maybe Brazilian companies may want to get to know, and the showcase technology plants that there are a number of sayings in Brazil that say we need to see it to believe it. So these benchmark showcase plants have this objective of introducing the technology, so people can ask questions and see for themselves. And this is really something novel when you want to develop new technologies. I just wanted to say that sometimes we need to understand why the money, where does it come from? This is a complex process that has been developed, and the Global Environmental Fund, I have participating in the initial discussions on this. This fund has decided, based on federal government projects and Brazilian market, decided to invest in biogas. And this is very interesting. We have these non-refundable financial mechanisms to help this industry of biogas and biomethane. I am now going to move on to the next speaker. I'd like to ask Clarissa to move on with her screen while I read her CV, Clarissa is a representative of the Prosperity Fund of the UK and Brazil. She's going to talk about business in biogas, decarbonization. Uh, the title of your speech, which is to build a production chain, is very relevant and including the social aspect. She's the director of the energy program, BEP, of the Prosperity Fund of the UK. She took this position in January 21. Before she became the leader of BEP, she worked at the energy policy at the British Embassy, trying to increase the bonds between UK and Brazil in the energy section, especially to accelerate global energy transition and promoting clean and inclusive growth. She has been working for the British government in Brazil for 7 years, and she has worked as political government relation person. You have the floor, Clarissa.
Thank you, Rafael. I hope my presentation works and so do my slides. I would like to start by thanking the organizers and also my colleagues in the panel. I was really impressed by both presentations by Renato and Bruno. I can see really that there is synergism, a strong complementarity between everything that is being discussed here, all of these initiatives. I'm happy to realize how much we can achieve together. As mentioned before, I represent this initiative from Great Britain in the form of the BEP. Today, we're going to talk about the reuse of waste to develop energy, and I would like to talk about the energy program. The energy program in Brazil is funded by the Great Britain government, but it was developed in partnership with the Brazilian government and other partners here in Brazil and also in the UK. The objective is to demonstrate a global leadership of Brazil and the UK in the innovating use of renewable energy and clean energy. Brazil and the UK are global leaders in energy transformation, and actually, they are partners in the UN as champions for energy transition. We have a lot to do together for the promotion of this agenda at a global level. The energy program comes in as one of the cooperation instruments for Brazil and the UK in the transformation of energy, also in the promotion of inclusive and sustainable development. This partnership was made official in December last year by the Brazil and the UK ministers. This was done by a memorandum of understanding where they signed this partnership to work together and promote energy transformation and clean energy. I would also like to use this opportunity to mention other partnerships. I have mentioned the the UN partnership, but we also have a cooperation agenda that becomes more relevant because of the priorities determined by the UK on what we call climate actions or climate actions in the real world. As president of COP26, the UK is responsible for bringing climate change discussions to the real world. We can include and integrate governments, the private sector, the organized civil society to promote an international cooperation focusing on results and the promotion of sustainable prosperity. This can be seen in the energy program for Brazil. There is a commitment to contribute for decarbonization goals according to the Paris Agreement. Renato's presentation was amazing in terms of the government goals. It was very clear for me. I hope that it's clearer for us, for you as well. That's an important part of our energy program for Brazil and how we can contribute for this market here in Brazil for us to reach these objectives. In addition, as the title of the lecture says, another important part of the program has to do with gender and social inclusion. And so all of our activities and the results obtained by the energy program should contribute for the sustainable development, which is inclusive. This really complements what biogas actors in Brazil already do: development in different scales, the diversity, and also the promotion of growth, working directly with all different stakeholders. As I mentioned before, the program is carried out in partnership with Brazil and also a diversity of partners. Our focus is on policies, market policies, technological policies in different sectors. Biogas is biogas and biomethane actually are part of what we do. The next slide summarizes what I tried to say: support the Brazilian energy transition as an opportunity for growth and inclusive economic development, as a solution for renewable energy, access to competitive energy. This is very important for us all, with all of the interventions and products that we are producing with this program. I will now explain how the implementation of the program works. The program is funded by the Great Britain government and is implemented here in Brazil by a consortium led by Adam Smith International. This company has operated in over 3 decades in almost 100 countries. It works locally, making the economies stronger, governments more effective. This consortium, even though it is led by Adam Smith, it wants or is aimed at representing the diversity that we try to bring in this program. And so, in addition to Adam Smith, we have the local knowledge, which informs all of the interventions of the program. In the program, we have the participation of FGV hubs. FGV is an institution which has excellence in teaching, research. Hubs has an experience in developing links with funding, universities, different stakeholders, providing support to generate business opportunities. As I mentioned, we have a lot of opportunities for the real world, and in special, I-17, a non-for-profit organization aimed at sustainable development, dealing with issues related to circular economy, local impact. And there's another part of the consortium represented by Cardum Technologies, which works with the industry and the British government to accelerate clean development with a sustainable economy. As I mentioned, the whole consortium was aimed at developing opportunities, focusing on inclusion and sustainability actions. And then a little bit about this program and biogas. Based on the context that I mentioned here, what I wanted to mention to help guide this presentation and also has to do with the principles of what our activities in biogas has to do with the technologies and biogas models, which will generate more employment and support energy production here in Brazil in the short term. I will now try to summarize the scope of our performance. Everything that was designed for the program is focusing on strategic value activities to maximize expansion in the sector. So in our case, we have these three main pillars of activities, including regulation, technology, and business model. We have already performed market analysis and also a short-term action plan. I will get into details soon, but in addition to what we've already done, we want to use this as a basis to enable the implementation of the action plan in the short term and also to prepare long-term strategies. So I will now break down some of the results. The program started implementation last year. In this slide, you can see it, and my presentation will be made available later on. I will not have enough time to get into details, but you can have access to the presentation. I will only highlight a few. The main one that we wanted to share with you is how we can focus on the strategic value and the opportunities that have been created.
Pouquinho mais aqui na parte do em três principais exemplos de
I will
resultados.
also talk about three examples of results. The first one is the effects of biogas in the short term. We have an assessment of data, which is very interesting. You can see the long-term potential, but in special, in the short term, which do not have technological barriers to come through. We have an estimate of the program for waste and effluents in the energy sector, the agribusiness sector, treated sewage. So you have this available. And now breaking down the results that were presented in the previous slide, you can see the impact it has on the emissions of greenhouse gases. You can see that this is all equivalent to 70% of what is produced in the country. And now you can see the results for the different sectors. We are trying to develop an equivalence for the short term. You can see that the values are very high, demanding significant increases in the sector. This is real world data, and we wanted it to be as close to reality as possible. Another example is the analysis of the benefits of biogas in 12 cases from the real world. We have quantitative and qualitative analysis. The quantitative analysis is more innovating. We used a method which is acknowledged internationally to evaluate biogas and its impacts. We analyzed, for example, the impact of diesel production and how much we can reduce it if we use biomethane to replace biodiesel. Also, biofertilizers, and the same is true for electrical energy. We analyzed different impacts, collected data on employment generation in the cases that we're working with, always dealing with the actual impacts, social inclusion, generation of prosperity. In analyzing this, or in analyzing just the greenhouse gas emission, we can see that sometimes we can identify a negative carbon footprint. Based on this, we can encourage the development of specific public policies and also programs for the payment of specific services and the like. We can see how the number of benefits and attributes that can be generated by biogas. We know that the potential is well established, but here we have concrete data demonstrating all of this. And then finally, in analyzing regulatory issues, in red, you can see activities that have already been performed in terms of determining the scope, data production, validation with the sector according to surveys. And we are preparing some reports that you can see here in blue. I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation that this is aimed at enabling the implementation of the proposals and recommendations that we developed based on all of this data. Economic aspect analysis. Here we have preliminary data. This is a graph on energy where we compare costs in different regions. The innovating aspect of this study is the possibility to change it for different uses of biogas, agribusiness. This was all based on existing methodology at BP, and now we have the analysis of inclusive business models, including environmental, social, economic replication, and innovation. I'm not going to get into the details because I do not have enough time, but the program is collaborative. This is something I want to highlight. Everything I showed you here was developed in partnership with different partners and stakeholders. This far, we've had 80 meetings between August 2020, when we started implementing the program, and early 2021. I'd like to highlight that we have different partners, but I wanted to highlight this partnership with the federal government and also the agriculture ministry with BP and BRAPA. In addition to these partners, we have different partners in the organized civil society and private sector, so that everything that is produced by the government is validated by the sector. There are different visions, and it's important that whatever we produce is useful, leads to transformation, enabling all of the opportunities we see that we can have with this sector. This is a picture of our team. It's a multidisciplinary team with over 30 consultants and specialists in biogas in different teams. And as I mentioned, this program is a partnership. Everything that we're producing is open to your feedback. If you have any ideas, suggestions, comments on what is being developed and how we can make implementation possible, contact us, contact our team. We really want the program to be developed together in partnership. And then finally, we have the opportunities. We have the Brazil UK biogas meeting. We will participate in other panels in the forum on the partnership between Brazil and the UK, how we can improve our experiences, how we can enable technological innovation together, and really have a win-win. Last week, I talked to our Minister Albuquerque and our ambassador here in the UK. We really want it to be a win-win situation for us all. There's a lot that we can do together so that this is an opportunity for mutual wins. This is my contact information so that you can contact us. Thank you very much.
Excelente, Clarissa. Muito obrigado pela
Excellent, Clarissa. Thank you very much for your presentation. I understand that what you're doing is help develop this production chain. In your presentation, you have talked about business models. This is something that I really like to mention every time I talk about this. We really need to have the support to do this. The program is aimed at this. It will help us develop this market. I'd like to make a comment though, even though you talked about biogas, there are other sources of renewable energy and the complementarity that we can have in our country working with the UK. Congratulations, and we are available as well. I will now invite Alessandro Gardeman. Alessandro, if you could open your mic, your camera, and share your presentation, I would appreciate that. I will read your CV and you can start your presentation. Alessandro has a degree by FGV on business administration. He works in the financial market. In 2008. He founded Geoenergetica, and since then he has been dedicating his work to biogas. He was one of the founders of the Brazilian Association of Biogas. I congratulate you for your activities on the area of biogas, and I now invite you to share your screen with us. You have 15 minutes for your presentation as well.
A great honor to be here. I am, let's say, temporarily the CEO of AB Biogas. It's an initiative that's been built over the year. It's a great pleasure to be here. Congratulations. This event is a great success. This is a living proof of the increasing relevant role of biogas in our lives. I'm going to be brief. The mission of biogas is to articulate the chain from the developer of technology, equipment supplier, stakeholder, and electric power, biogas, biomethane, have impact on government policies. Regulation is something we've been working on from the onset. Increase of participation of biogas in the market, regulation, ANP regulation of biogas and biomethane, and now building information and making the government aware, producing reports and working on financial options, guarantee funds, investments, articulation with the Development Bank of Brazil, BNDES, regional investors, international investors, and so on. We are nearly 80 members. And from the entire chain, small producers, large producers, developers of technology, any stakeholder in the biogas chain is welcome. We have been growing very fast. A lot of the interesting ideas came from the networking between the various elements within the biogas industry. Yesterday, I was reading a text about ESG, environmental
Biogás, ele é ESG raiz.
Social responsibility. Biogas is all about that. It has a huge social and environmental impact.
E dentro dos impactos ambientais e sociais,
as part of the social and environmental impacts, the circular economy is just one of them. Biogas is quintessentially the circular economy, using waste, reusing energy, returning organic matter back to the environment, helping to decarbonize the production chain, obviously with less chemical fertilizers, so we can dream about a city in which waste will fuel public transformation, or a farm is going to use this to fuel the tractors and equipment, and sugar cane. Also, all this is quintessentially what circular economy is. One thing that we have to keep repeating is to make sure that we know what biogas is. We have an active reduction of greenhouse gases, as it has been mentioned previously. You can even achieve negative carbon footprint when you integrate biogas into the system. The decentralized generation, we have the capacity to generate electric power as well as fuel to produce biofertilizer in a decentralized way. So we bring gas where there's no gas. So we can dream about a truck that is in Curitiba with biogas and using biomethane, and then going back to Santa Catarina, fueled by natural gas. So you generate a gas supply where there is no gas. In addition to being among the renewables, the only one that's dispatchable and storable. So we're like an electric battery. So we can have a competitive 4-hour battery. We can store it for 24 hours very cheaply. So that is our dream. So biogas has the capacity of generating to the end user. It's easily dispatchable and storable. So, and these are the advantage because that's why it's so complementary to intermittent sources, and it's perfect for everything that has been conceived for natural gas. And that's what I liked about Renato's presentation. So this is the main advantage of biogas, that we need to integrate this in the development of the energy mix, of fossil energy mix, of natural gas. We talk about the Brazilian energy mix being green, but you can't forget that in the last 30 years, we have been making it less and less clean. If we don't do this at the end of the day, to have a guarantee of the system, you have to have thermals. And why not have thermals but powered by biogas? So it is a huge potential. We have seen the numbers. Sanitation, which is very important, which is less than 10% of the potential. Animal protein, nearly 40%, and the energy cycle, very large potential. Given the scale of sugarcane in Brazil. So these numbers are always impressive. We use different numbers from EPE. We can replace up to 70% of diesel. Renato said we have pressure on diesel consumption. Why not do this with decarbonization, reducing risk, reducing costs, without a dollar risk, without being exposed to an exchange rate, and for electric power is also a huge potential. But we still have a long way to go. We only use 2% of the biogas potential currently, and we're still below 0.1% of the energy mix in Brazil. So there's gigantic potential. We have grown tenfold, nearly 18-fold in the last decade. So there's a huge potential to be tapped. One thing we know a lot about is the new generation.
A gente já discute bastante.
Biogas generation. This is something that we have been discussing with Biogas, with Embrapa.
O setor energético, para remunerar o gás,
The
da
energy
maneira que ele deve ser
sector
remunerado,
to pay off gas has to make sure that there's availability and quality. If you don't manage that throughout the year and along the years, along the day, along the months of the year, we will not be able to get paid for what it's worth. We can't. Biogas, it's a highly noble, renewable molecule.
precificar isso a preço de lenha.
We can't sell this at the low price. We have to make sure there's availability and quality, and for this we need to invest in our plants.
Fazer planejamento eficiente.
So we need to have efficient planning.
Acompanhar a conversão da matéria orgânica.
Conversion of organic matter being monitored.
A gente deveria estar.
How much gas we should be generating and how much we manage to generate. Reduce the time the organic matter is within the biodigester. Usually it's 20 days. It generates double amount of gas as when it stays there for 40 days. So you have to work on this. The quality of biomethane. If we want to sell this as a natural gas or LPG price, we have to make sure there's quality and availability. And also look at engine electrical efficiency, how much they actually use. 15-20% electric efficiency generates 40%.
Então, isso tem que ser.
Those at 22%. So you have to really monitor this very closely. So we make these comparisons. So the importance of working efficiently and developing in that sense. Same thing when it comes to purification.
Quanto que a gente está gerando de biogás?
How much are we generating in biogas? With 85% of methane recovery, we generate 100,000 reais less. And the life cycle analysis is not even considered.
Vai nos penalizar. Então, num período de 5 anos.
So, within 5 years,
em 2 milhões.
From 85 to 99, we can increase the revenue of a project in 2 million. This really helps. And that's for 1 mega equivalent. 2 million cubic meters of biomethane per year, something around 5,000 per day. So it's a lot of extra revenue. So it's 30,000 reais per month just for investing in efficiency. So that's why it's so interesting. It's so attractive. The GF and BP programs for the showcase plants, for disseminating knowledge, exchanging ideas. There's no such a thing as a ready-made solution, a one-size-fit-all solution. We need a Brazilian solution. We can be inspired by what happens abroad, but we need to adapt it to our situation.
A gente tem espaço muito bom de manter as nossas regras.
In GD, we have great space to keep, not to keep the rules. No, sorry, that's not what I meant. I would like to keep the rules today, but to have a smoother transition towards biogas. Today, we don't use all the installed capacity, and we only have 78 so far. So there's still so much to do.
Está crescendo muito, né? O setor.
This is a sector that's growing very fast. It's making headway very quickly. We're number one in the world in industrial and agricultural waste. It's the only place in the world where this can be done. in a fast way, an efficient way, in a country where energy is expensive. Biogas can be very competitive, but we need to scale up. We can be competitive compared to solar energy. We need to increase availability. We can't work 65% of the year. We have to work 95% of the year. In the long run, we can definitely be competitive compared to solar energy.
E aí
Sure.
Pergunta bastante,
but this has to go all over the country. A lot of people ask, is it interchangeable with natural gas? This is very important because this is already supposed to be part of the gas law. We have the same heat power. It can be regulated by ANP. It's a great solution for trucks, especially for dedicated fleets. It can be injected in the distribution network and can replace diesel as well as LPG. And it is also renewable, the best rank in bio, and
enquanto você tiver resíduos, tem produção de biogás.
As long as you have waste, you have biogas. You don't have a risk of exploring. Investors say, well, biogas risk. Well, the risk is to go drilling below the salt layer, and you get there, you get nothing, and after 5 years, that well is depleted. We can be adjusted by inflation. That's very important. The other one is our oil baskets. So when we participate in auctions, first of all, biogas has to be part of the natural gas auctions because it's equivalent. It's renewable and decentralized, and it generates a lot more jobs than centralized plants. And also you can correct fuel according to inflation. This is very stable. So biogas is within this new world, Renovabio, modernizing the energy sector, the free market. Not many people are talking about that. What's going to happen now? All the sanitation regulatory framework that is being worked on now has a lot to do with biogas. So we have to recognize what biogas, the role it can play in the energy mix, recognize the positive environmental impacts, and make sure we want to have the same competition rights as the other sources. They all had energy, dedicated energy auctions. All the sources were given the chance of scaling before they started. We still don't have the scale we need. The auctions have to recognize the positive impact on decarbonization, and especially the stability of pricing. So I think I stuck to my time, Rafael. I had to run fast because I didn't have all that much time, but I'm anyway available if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Excelente, Alessandro. Obrigado.
Thank you, Alessandro. Excellent. Thank you for sharing a screen. I don't think we need to say much more. Biogas is very important. We have the possibility of building a path that is going to be very, very good for the industry. And there's also the vision of seeking efficiency. I understand that we're growing very fast when it comes to technology, and efficiency becomes even more relevant when we want new contracts, new pathways, new guarantees, and the more the market demands from us all these guarantees. I'd like to ask all of our panel members to come back and turn on their cameras. You can, we don't turn your microphones on yet because we don't have so much time. Well, we were a bit delayed in the beginning. Thank you so much for sticking to your time during your presentations, but we only have 10 minutes for discussion, unfortunately. And there are two questions that were selected from the participants.
Trazer essas perguntas à tona, o público que está nos assistindo, eles votaram em duas perguntas.
They had a vote on the most interesting questions. One of the questions is,
Na verdade, eu vou direcionar as duas, mas queria que depois outros atores
in fact,
I'm going to ask you two questions and then I wanted the other ones to comment on it. And so the first question, I will read it. The first question is on sugarcane biomass. Do you have any plants or operations that use this biomass? Do any of you know? The question is on the large scale of sugarcane and energy. I will now submit this question to Alessandro, but please feel free to answer it. Do you know who asked the question? Well, I thank you for your question. A lot of people are talking about this, but I don't think that there's anything operating right now on sugarcane and energy. We have to understand what the price of fuel will be like and what the cost of raw materials is going to be. Excellent. Would anybody else like to comment on it? Any other speaker before we move on to the next question? Clarissa, Bruno. An additional comment is that it is important to understand that each biomass that we find, and I remember that in the past, when we didn't have information on the quality of biogas that was produced or the volume and quality, the amount of biogas and the different substrates and opportunities must obviously be typified, qualified, so that we can have a new product developed. Throughout the studies and the analysis in Europe, we understood that there is a series of products that are considered as projects that may produce energy. Here in Brazil, the value is different. There are different economic conditions that render biomass as something which is not as attractive for the production of energy. So this is something for us in the sector to analyze, sugarcane and energy. I also understand that we do not have large-scale plants in Brazil. There are ongoing studies and universities that are trying to better understand all of this research. In the case of biogas, we have analyzed the potential of biomethane, but not from the point of view of large-scale plants. Question number two now. Question number two. I understand that it's very difficult for us to find a model, but we can discuss improvements on the conditions for the development of energy. So what is the potential of biogas for the generation of electricity in rural areas, thinking about the long term? I'm not going to ask any specific speaker, but I'd like you to answer if you want to volunteer in terms of the potential and generation as well.
Posso começar, então?
Can I start? I will give you a perspective. We're often asked about projects. Projects right now in this edition focus on the South. You know that you have to have a more specific focus to have better outcomes. I will talk about our current numbers for the South, keeping in mind industry waste, agribusiness waste. If we take into account that Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, and Santa Catarina produce about 160 million cubic meters of biogas, and the estimate is that we can reach up to 3 billion cubic meters. We're talking about a long-term capacity, and of course, we have to adjust this potential to business models and so on and so forth. But we're talking in general terms. If we consider the cubic meters, and Alessandro, help me now, cubic meters, so we have about 5 kilowatts per hour. Yes, correct. Is that all? Yes, 2 kilowatts hour thermal, 5 electric. So if we take into account 2 gigas of this potential of 150 million to 3 billion, more or less. But the main issue here is adjusting this to the perspective of implementation of a business model. If we take into account the business models with the large integrators in the south, integrators of animal proteins and dairies that will have the capacity to use this, we are talking about a threefold increase of the current capacity according to our early figures. And this gives us an estimate if we reach to 450 million, and then we would have to have more calculation. But this is what we have in mind. The numbers will grow as the business models start integrating all of these potentials. We have to work with technology and service providers, funding institutions, so that they can meet the needs of this market. And the numbers are very high. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Gardner. Would anybody else like to comment on this question? It's funny. I was very happy with PDE and when they acknowledged the future of biogas in the matrix. This is a landmark, a historical landmark. The projection of IPE are very conservative. We understand that planners are here so that we can be consistent and looking at the long term, but at the rate that the world and the society want to move away from fossil fuel. By 2030, it will be it's difficult for us to understand and support this model, especially if you have an alternative with renewable energy sources, with cost reductions, lower risks. We cannot forget that we're always exposed to ships in the Suez Canal. So why do we have to submit ourselves to that if we have renewable sources available in Brazil? We have an ambition to deliver a lot more than what is in PDE. This must be the ambition of the sector and the civil society. Well, it's actually the ambition of the civil society. We have to have adequate technology with assurance of quality, as we're discussing here. Very good, Alessandro. I thank you. I'm sorry for not being able to move on with our discussion. We have other agendas after that. I still need to share two messages. First of all, I wanted to thank all of the speakers and our audience. The panel was excellent. It all had to do with the different discussions and an overall view of what we can see in the biogas panorama in Brazil. The presence of the ministry is very important. The IDP project, which carried out 80 meetings in such a short period of time. And of course, the FE project implemented by UNIDO with the support or coordination of MCTI is also very important. I wanted to make a final comment. We in C Biogas every year, but especially in March, launch some information for the sector. They have to do with the new plants that are being developed for electric and thermal energy. I'm not going to get into the details, but as of today, we made it public in our website, www.gasbiogas.org. So we issued a technical note on the growth in terms of plants that we identify. We're sharing our numbers. For those of you who are not familiar with it, please connect yourselves to this type of tool, access our site and the events site. We're proud to share this type of information. This is shared and produced by different stakeholders that we try to use so that we can introduce these news to the countries, the new plants, the new opportunities to produce biogas, generate electric energy, biomethane. And I close this session by saying that you should use this tool and including the panelists, even though I haven't arranged this beforehand with them. Unfortunately, this is not a on-site event where we have coffee breaks that we can use to talk to one another, but this tool is innovating and allow us to have this kind of interaction. I wish you a successful event, all speakers and the companies you represent, and also the biogas sector. I now turn back to Flavia. She's going to wrap up. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. We thank Rafael, our moderator, all of the panelists and speakers, Renato, Bruno, Clarissa, Alessandro. Thank you very much. I now invite everybody to participate in the discussion rooms, which take place as of now, and the access can be done directly on the platform's main page. Discussion room number 1 with the topic, what are the barriers and challenges to the development of the biogas sector in the south of Brazil? And this is going to be done by Rafael. And then we have room number 2 with a call for tender and a moderator, Nathalie Nunes. I'd like to remind you all that the access code is desenvolvimento. So this is the access code for the challenge of biogas. The code is desenvolvimento. We also would like to give you an opportunity to get to know different projects, talk to the representatives of all of these companies. We wish you all a wonderful break, and I'd like to remind you that we rejoin at 2 o'clock sharp to talk about distributed biogas